Night anime recap. Sakuta can't believe his eyes when one day he's sitting in the library and a girl in a bunny costume hops around among the people, trying in vain to get their attention. But even though Mai is a famous actress, people don't give the bunny girl a single glance. Sakuta knows that Mai recently took a career break and is a senior at his school. Now he seems to be the only one who can see his senpai, which also surprises Mai, who briefly advises him to stay away from her. The next day, Sakuta sees Mai again at school and notices that she is always on her own. Having missed a few years of school due to her career, she now seems to have lost connections. None of the students want to stand out by befriending her. On the way home, Sakuta witnesses two people secretly trying to take a photo of Mai and quickly intervenes. This gets him talking to Mai, and he wants to find out more about her curious behavior at the library. But she deflects attention from herself and asks Sakuta about a rumor making the rounds at school that Sakuta beat up 3 classmates who ended up in the hospital. Sakuta denies the incident, but claims he has no interest in clearing up this rumor at school. This makes her open up to him. Having worked as an actress since the age of 6, she eventually reached a point where she no longer enjoyed acting and took a break. Shortly after, she noticed that some people could no longer see her. That's why she tested people's reactions with her bunny girl costume, because it's impossible to miss her in this costume. Shortly thereafter, Sakuta experiences the phenomenon described by Mai with his own eyes. She desperately tries to order something at a bakery, but is ignored by the shop assistant. For Sakuta, the diagnosis is quite clear: puberty syndrome. An abnormal experience caused by hypersensitivity and instability during puberty. In other words, a phenomenon that attacks the most vulnerable characteristics of an adolescent and manifests itself in various forms. Sakuta himself was not spared from this syndrome, which he proves to Mai with the large scars on his upper body. And Sakuta's little shut-in sister Keed was also a victim of the puberty syndrome 2 years ago. She was severely cyberbullied by her classmates, which showed on her body by sudden deep wounds. During this time, Sakuta woke up one morning covered in blood and had to go to the hospital, which gave him his deep scars and started the hospital rumors at school. Sakuta realizes that Mai probably suffers from invisibility, as she always tries to make herself invisible at school and stand out as little as possible, which results in her actually being invisible to some people. Sakuta sees only one way to reverse this: Mai must resume her acting career. When Mai doesn't show up at school the next day, Sakuta regrets interfering in her affairs. Later, while working in a restaurant, he is visited by a reporter who is interested in photos of Sakuta's scars. Although Sakuta has no interest in this public attention, he decides to give her a photo in exchange for information about Mai. Later, Sakuta visits his smart friend Futaba to ask her opinion about Mai's puberty syndrome. Futaba states that Mai's invisibility is related to the theory of observation and draws the comparison to Schrödinger's cat. If there are no observers for Mai's existence, it is not confirmed. When Sakuta returns home that evening, he finds a distraught Mai at his front door, now unable to even go shopping because people no longer see her. Since Sakuta is now afraid of forgetting Mai as well, he writes down his experiences in a diary. A few days later, Sakuta tries to persuade Mai to continue her acting career. He confronts her with the information he received from the reporter. Her mother, who is also her manager, has decided against Mai's protests that bikini photos of her should be published. Mai's subsequent exit from the business was her ultimate revenge on her mother. Although Mai is initially upset that Sakuta obtained this private information about her, she eventually becomes concerned that photos of Sakuta's scars will now be published. She calls the reporter and offers her an irresistible deal. In exchange for deleting Sakuta's photos, she will get an exclusive interview with Mai, who plans to return to acting under a new agency and fire her mother. To thank Sakuta for encouraging her to follow her passion, she invites him on a date. Sakuta can hardly believe his luck and excitedly sets off for his meeting with Mai a few days later. But as he passes a park, he sees a little girl crying and immediately rushes to help her. However, he is suddenly kicked violently from behind by his classmate Tomo, who thinks he is trying to hurt the little girl. When Sakuta clarifies the situation, Tomo apologizes and demands him to kick her back to make amends. Unfortunately for Sakuta, however, his kick is witnessed by a police officer, and the two teens are taken to the police station to clear up the incident. When Sakuta finally arrives at the station, Mai is extremely annoyed about his tardiness. But they continue their date anyway and go to the beach together. At the beach, Sakuta recalls an experience he had there a few years ago. When his little sister began to suffer from puberty syndrome, his mother couldn't cope with the situation and became very ill. One day everything became too much for Sakuta and he ran to the beach. There he met a girl, Shoko, who supported him in his darkest time. It was Sakuta's first love. After the holidays were over, he looked forward to seeing Shoko again at school, but she wasn't there, and he's never seen her since. After he tells Mai his story, she confesses that she also has something important to do on this beach. She had arranged a meeting with her mother to confess that she wants to continue her acting career without her. But when Mai's mother arrives at the beach, she simply passes Mai by. Not even Mai's own mother seems to see her now, and after talking to Sakuta, it becomes clear that she does not remember her daughter anymore. Mai is desperate about her situation and Sakuta has one last idea. He wants to go with her to a bigger city to find out if they might still find people who know Mai. But they have no success there either and finally take a hotel room to spend the night. When Mai wakes up the next day, Sakuta is lying next to her and confesses to not having slept a wink all night. When the two arrive back at the school, Futaba has more bad news. The whole school seems to have forgotten Mai's existence. Futaba suspects that only Sakuta and herself can remember Mai, since neither of them slept the previous night. Sakuta realizes this means that he will also forget Mai the next time he goes to sleep. With lots of caffeine and pills, he desperately keeps himself awake over the next few days, running around like a zombie. When Mai is at Sakuta's house to study, she finally relieves him of his torment by mixing a sleeping pill into his drink. When Sakuta wakes up the next day, he is first confused about the bunny girl costume next to his bed and even more confused about his diary entries of the last few days. His memory of Mai has disappeared. But while he's writing a test at school, it all comes flooding back. Flashbacks of the beautiful moments he's had with Mai pop into his head, and the solution is suddenly crystal clear to him. He has to fight this atmosphere that surrounds the school, where everyone is afraid of being different or standing out. Sakuta runs in front of the school building and screams his head off, confessing his love for Mai in front of the whole school. Suddenly she appears next to him and smacks him. Mai is furious because Sakuta broke his promise never to forget her. However, Sakuta promises to confess his love to her every single day to make up for it. Mai then shouts to the students that the rumors about Sakuta beating up classmates are not true. The students finally seem to notice her again, and the world has gotten Mai back. But it was not to be Sakuta's last encounter with puberty syndrome. When he wakes up on June 27th, the day seems to start like any other. At school, Mai announces the happy news that she has landed a new role, and Sakuta asks her to be his girlfriend. That night, he falls asleep overjoyed. But when he wakes up the next day, he is shocked to find that it is June 27th all over again. It seems as if he is reliving the exact same day, and Mai once again agrees to be his girlfriend. When Sakuta wakes up for the third time on June 27th, he desperately seeks out Futaba. She recognizes the puberty syndrome in the form of Laplace's demon, who knows the position and movement of all the atoms in the world and thus can predict the future. Since Sakuta is sure that this time loop in which he is stuck is not his, he sets out to find the true demon and quickly finds it in his classmate Tomo, who is hiding in a classroom from a boy who wants to confess his love for her. However, since this boy is the crush of Tomo's best friend, she is afraid that this will make her unpopular and therefore wants to change the course of events by repeating the day. After a heated discussion, Sakuta and Tomo fall over, and while the two are lying on top of each other, the boy comes in and interprets the situation to his defeat. Mai also comes by at that moment and interprets the sight in the same way. But Sakuta doesn't even bother to explain the situation to Mai, because the day would start all over again anyway. However, now that Tomo's problem has been solved, to Sakuta's great displeasure, June 28th starts the next day, and he also finds that Tomo's friends now believe that something is going on between him and Tomo. But afraid of being stuck in another time loop, he can't clear up this misunderstanding either, and seeing the despair in Tomo's eyes, he promises to help her by pretending to go out with her. That evening, Mai shows up at Sakuta's door and demands an explanation from him. After he has described the situation to her, she is not very enthusiastic, but nevertheless accepts Sakuta's selfless action. A few days later, Sakuta and Tomo meet for a date, which they spend at the zoo, taking many photos as proof of their supposed relationship. However, a few days later, Tomo's reputation at school, which is more important to her than anything else, begins to falter when sexual rumors about their relationship spread. Later at the station, a group of bullies messes with Sakuta, but he manages to defeat his attackers. He also clears up the rumors by informing his classmates that he is still a virgin. On the last day of school, the two have one last date at the beach. They eat grilled corn, have fun in the sea, build sandcastles, eat ice cream, and watch the sunset. Tomo thanks him for their time together and shakes his hand in farewell, ending their pretend relationship. When Sakuta's little sister wakes him up the next day, he is upset because he wanted to sleep in on his first day of vacation. But to his great astonishment, she corrects him it's the last day of school. Again. At school, Sakuta immediately seeks out Tomo to talk to her about being stuck in the time loop again. But Tomo claims that she cannot remember their date the day before. When Sakuta again asks Futaba for help, she is skeptical of Tomo's claims and believes that she is still Laplace's demon. Later, Sakuta and Tomo experienced the same fun day at the beach and ended again, parting in friendship at sunset. But after Sakuta experiences the same day a third and then a fourth time, he finally bursts. He explains to Tomo that he doesn't feel like going to the beach and instead takes her to the city of Inashima. There, the two spend a fun day together, eventually ending it with a serious conversation. Tomo bursts into tears and confesses that her feelings for Sakuta have been growing stronger by the day. But Sakuta tells her that he'll always love Mai, no matter how many times she'll restart the day over. But he promises to be there for her as a friend, and Tomo promises him that this was now their last date together. When Sakuta wakes up the next day, the time jump is greater than ever before. Suddenly it is June 27th again, the day when the fake relationship originally began. But now Sakuta seizes his chance and asks Mai to be his girlfriend again. The rest of the time before the summer holidays goes exactly the same way as the first time, only this time with Mai by his side instead of Tomo. One day, on their way home, Sakuta and Mai suddenly come across a schoolmate who is caring for an abandoned kitten. The girl introduces herself as Shoko. Sakuta is taken aback, she has the same name and appearance as his first love. But this time she is younger than him, and she does not seem to know Sakuta either. Sakuta offers to take the kitten in, where Shoko can come and visit at any time. To discuss this next abnormality, Sakuta wants to meet Futaba and finds her in the library. However, he is taken aback by the drastic glow-up Futaba seems to have experienced. Later, Sakuta is surprised by Mai at work, and when the two are about to go home from the restaurant, they suddenly see Futaba enter an internet cafe in a side alley. In order to find her, Sakuta calls her and talks to her on the phone when she suddenly walks past them without talking on the phone. Sakuta and Mai confront Futaba, and she reports that she has been living with a doppelganger for 3 days. Apparently, she has now also caught the puberty syndrome. The next day at school, Sakuta learns the catalyst for the sudden existence of the two Futabas, when Futaba got herself a secret social media account a few weeks ago, where she posted revealing pictures of herself. She began to split in two. On one side, Futaba liked the attention she was getting with these photos. On the other, she disapproved of her means. Thus, this split occurred, and the second Futaba now continues to post these photos, while the first Futaba wishes for an end to these postings. Sakuta takes matters into his own hands and tries to persuade the second Futaba to delete her account. But she is blinded by the attention she receives there and initially refuses. However, when she receives a sinister message from an anonymous sender, she decides to delete the account after all. After Sakuta accompanies the now frightened Futaba home, she tells him of her great fear of being alone. To prove to her that her friends will always be there for her, Sakuta asks her to meet them at the station immediately. The three then have a fun night at the beach and head home at sunrise. Sakuta is delighted to announce the great news to the first Futaba: her account has been deleted. But when he gives her back her cell phone and she sees the wallpaper, a photo of her doppelganger having fun at the beach with her two best friends, Futaba doubts that there is still room for her in this city and takes off. Sakuta tracks Futaba down at school and persuades her to join him and their friend to the fireworks in a few days. Futaba wants to accept the invitation, but before she does, she calls her doppelganger to talk to her about it, and surprisingly, the two are reunited in the process. After the summer holidays, Sakuta is looking forward to finally seeing Mai again, with whom he has not been allowed to meet publicly in recent weeks because of the strict conditions imposed by her agency. But Mai seems to be nowhere to be found, until Sakuta suddenly sees her on the street with a blonde girl. The two girls explain to him the terrible events that happened to them. Mai and her younger sister Nodoka seem to have switched bodies. The next puberty syndrome. Since the two don't know how to undo it, they have to take care of each other's upcoming appointments. For Nodoka, that means photo shoots and commercials in Mai's body, and for Mai, singing and dancing lessons and performances, because Nodoka is part of the idol group Sweet Bullet. Sakuta soon finds out that the cause of the body swap lies with the mothers of the half-sisters. They have tried for years to play Mai and Nodoka off against each other by putting them in acting classes and always wanting their own daughter to be more successful than the other. This has led to the sisters despising and envying each other, which eventually led them to swap bodies. But since the relationship between the two sisters is still icy, reconciliation seems impossible, and for the time being the two are content to live each other's lives. At one of Mai's commercial shoots, however, Nodoka faints and is disappointed that the pressure of her sister's career has become too much for her. Mai, on the other hand, masters the performance with Nodoka's idol group with flying colors and is even chosen as the lead singer for the next single. Furthermore, when Nodoka's mother tells her for the first time how proud she is, Nodoka is furious and wants to go into the water. Sakuta manages to save her and tells her that she is very important to some people. To prove it, he shows her the letters she wrote to Mai many years ago, which Mai has carefully kept all these years. Nodoka confesses that she doesn't envy her sister's life so much after all, and the two fall into each other's arms, thus curing their puberty syndrome and finding themselves in their own bodies. A few days later, Keed proudly presents her list of goals for the rest of the year, which includes finally going outside again and even going to school. But while Keed is practicing making phone calls with Mai, she suddenly faints and Sakuta notices a large bruise on her neck. But after recovering quickly, she is more determined than ever to finally take her first step outside again, and with Sakuta's help, she manages to do so. After a few days of practice, Keed even manages to have dinner at Mai's house, have a picnic on the beach, and visit the pandas at the zoo. But Sakuta is concerned about Keed's seemingly rapid improvement. He tells Mai how Keed lost her memory 2 years ago and became a completely new person in every way. Now he fears that if her old memory returns, she will forget the last 2 years again. He interprets the ever-growing bruises on Keed's neck as a sign of this. One evening, on their way home from the zoo, Sakuta and Keed pay a visit to the school. Although the school is closed, Keed chalks this up as her victory and can check it off her list of goals. When Keed wakes up the next day, her memories of going to school, going to the zoo, and even everything else that has happened in the past 2 years are swept away. The old Keith has returned. But Sakuta's despair over the loss of his sister over the past 2 years is somewhat alleviated by her diary entries, which reveal her gratitude and love for him. Meanwhile, Mai is sorely disappointed in Sakuta because he does not keep her informed and does not come to her with his problems. Also, due to the turmoil of the last few days, he almost forgets Mai's birthday and just manages to catch the last train to surprise her at her shooting location. The two reconcile with a view of the night skyline as snow falls, and when Sakuta finally waits for his first kiss from Mai, she playfully pinches his cheek.